Okay, welcome to this section 31, Enlightenment, Karen Armstrong, anthology analysis of her book for A-level Buddhism. Let's read it. But who should be first to hear the message, the Buddha thought, at once of his former teachers Alara, Kalama, and Udeka Rampuda. But some gods who were waiting nearby told him that they had both recently died. This was a great grief. His teachers had been good men who would certainly have understood his Dharma. Now, through no fault of their own, they had missed their chance and were condemned to yet another life of pain. This news would have given the Buddha a sense of urgency. He next recalled the 5 bhikkhus he had practiced the penitential disciplines of the Tapas with him. They had fled from him in horror when he had taken his first meal, but he could not allow this rejection to cloud his judgment. He remembered how helpful and supportive they had been during their time together, and set out directly to find them. Hearing that they were now living in the Deer Park outside Varanasi, modern Benares, he began his journey, determining to set the wheel of Dharma in motion, and as he put it, to beat the drum of the deathless Nibbana. He did not expect much. The Buddha mistakenly believed that his teaching would only be followed for a few hundred years. But the people had to be rescued. The Buddha was compelled, by the very nature of the enlightenment that he had achieved, to do what he could for them. Let's crack on. So who are the teachers Armstrong refers to? Let's do this in Alara, Kalama, and Udeka Ramputa. So Alara Kalama was a hermit and a teacher of ancient meditation. He was a specialist in Shramana philosophy, taught meditation to attain a trance-like state, a dhyanic state called the sphere of nothingness. In Pali Canon, the Aryapariyasana Sutta, he is the first teacher of the Buddha. He's mentioned. Udeka Ramputa, meaning son of Rama, was the Buddhist's second teacher, an ascetic, a possible Jain sage, a teacher of meditation to attain what he called refined states known as the immaterial attainments or formless realm. And this too is described in the Pali Canon Majjhima Nikaya. Some argue both were fictional creations. Armstrong, however, doesn't consider this. What is the role of the gods in the narrative? He says, some gods. We have gods several times in this text. And here we have it again. While the Buddha doesn't include the belief in a creator deity or any eternal divine personal being, Buddhism teaches that there are, as it were, divine beings, gods, devas, Buddhist deities, heavens and rebirth in its doctrine of samsara. Now, whether you take this metaphorically or whether you take this literally, well, that's a good question. The gods and devas are also trapped in the cycle, described as trapped in the cycle of rebirth, and are not necessarily virtuous. Thus, while Buddhism includes multiple gods, its main focus is not on them. Peter Harvey has a good name for this. He calls it trans-polytheistic. Are these gods useful fictions? Are they metaphors for our lives? The heavenly beings, gods, devas, perhaps the people who've achieved most in life and lived the most luxury, the hellish realm, demons and people, the the people who've had the worst possible life. Is that what it is? Or are these actual ontologically rich beings in the thought of that Buddhism? Well, certainly in Mahayana it is, but Theravada it's more questionable. You have Nibbana and you have Pari-Nibbana. There is no third heavenly realm in Theravada. But again, none of this is engaged with by Armstrong. So what does it mean to be condemned to another life of pain? Well, is this a reference to Buddhist rebirth or Hindu reincarnation? It's important to know the difference. In Hinduism, as most Eastern religions, there's a cycle of samsara caused by karma. And the thought is the soul, the individual person's essence, living in one human body, transmigrates to another. The movement of the soul is described in the Gita as one soul takes on a body and puts it off like you take and put off clothes. And one of the important things in Buddhism is this rejection belief in the Atman, the soul, in favor of anatta, no soul. And so a new word was needed, and the word is rebirth or rebecoming. This is the continuation of the individual's behaviors and karmic tendencies only after birth. So who are the mentioned 5 ascetics? Well, you should remember this from the story. 5 ascetics. Just to go back, the Pali word for birth, jati, refers to the arising of the self view of a being, sata. What is birth? The birth of various beings into the various orders of beings. Rebirth is the doctrine of moral efficiency, while reincarnation is the metaphysical doctrine of the soul entering a new physical body. So the setting of the wheel in motion of the Wheel of Dharma, Sutta records the Buddha's first sermon. 7 weeks after he attained enlightenment, his audience consisted of 5 ascetics who had been his companions. And we have them named. Kananda, the first and would become the leader, Asajay, Bajay, Vape, and Mahanama. They each in turn would become the first disciples and first become arahats, and thus the first sangha. So what are the penitential disciplines of tapas? And where is Armstrong getting this story from of tapas with him? Tapas is a variety of austere spiritual practices in Indian religions, Brahmanism, Hinduism, and beyond. The Buddhist practice was to fast, as it next says. He fled and heard him taking his first meal. It talks about him fasting. This account reflects common Buddhist stories of the conversion of the 5 ascetics from the Acts of the Buddha and the later the 2nd century one of Buddha Agosha and the 5th century hagiography, the Jagatanada Katha. So how accurate is all of this sort of geography going on here? Okay, so we've had this first meal, he's fasting, in other words, and the deer park in Varanasi, modern Benares, here they were now living. Well, this is interesting. Now she wants to give us some sort of historical critical term. Oh, this is a place you can archaeologically, geographically find. What's the significance for a non-cognitivist mystic like our author Karen Armstrong? Well, this is to do with pilgrimage. The Deer Park, along with 3 other places, was denoted to be believed Buddha as a place of pilgrimage site for Buddhists today. And so this is to do with the Buddha of faith, not the Gautama of history. The Buddha mentions these 4 pilgrimage sites in the Mahapari Nibbana Sutta. And it's kind of reasonable to consider them actual places. You can certainly see them today. Would they go back to the historical Buddha? Well, they're within walking distance of each other, albeit at some distance. Very possibly are the places he was born. He was enlightened, he first taught, and he died. Kusinara, so Lumbini, where he was enlightened, Bodh Gaya, Varanasi, or the Sarnath of Varanasi, where he first taught, very close to Bodh Gaya, and then Kusinara further northeast. His perhaps here this is a reference to the Buddha's death and second pilgrimage, determined to set the wheel of Dharma in motion, and as he put it, beat the drum of deathless nibbana. So this is maybe the Buddha's death in reference here, Kusanagara, where he died to attain parinibbana, and nirvana after death, without remainder, no clinging aggregates. When someone has attained nirvana, they die during his or her life. The Theravada certainly belief is release from samsara, karma, and rebirth, as well as the dissolution of the skandhas, the parinibbana. So why the implied skepticism that the Buddha felt towards his teachings' survival? The Buddha mistakenly believed that his teachings would only be followed for a few hundred years. It seems the Buddha did not expect much, but that he had to rescue them, which reflects the Theravada self-understanding of the hard way of renunciation. Or maybe it reflects the Mahayana idea in different ways that reaching a state of compassionate mind, Buddhism is often to use the analogy of dust in the eyes to signify how people find Buddhist teaching hard. It's hard to become compassionate. It's hard to discover your Buddha nature. It's hard to realize in Yogacara you're a thinker of dualistic thinking. Of course, none of this is what she considers or reflects on, critically examines, or engages with in this populist, pluralist, secular account of the Buddha that is Armstrong's hagiography, that bears how much or perhaps how little relation to the historical Buddha or even the Buddha of faith. So this has been Karen Armstrong. Well done if you've got this far in our anthology study. This is the last section. Well done.